From Venomoth to Yawgmoth, nerds like a lot of things, but there's something they love above all else, and that is correcting people. This is Actually. Joining us on today's episode, we have Andrew Rosas.
Hello.
We have Mike Drucker.
Hi.
And we have Joan Ford.
Hello.
Thank you to the three of you for joining us. You've all played before in some form. Mike, most of our viewers won't have seen you, but if any of our fans happen to have been at New York Comic Con the past, well, I guess this year doesn't count, but the 2 years before that, they would have seen you competing live on stage. But this is the first time actually coming on the show proper because we have to record remotely now.
That's why my place is dark and everyone else's is not.
The power of time zones. You all know how to play in some form, if you're at least familiar with this. If you are just watching us at home for the first time, I have here a stack of incorrect statements. These are false statements about nerdy shit, things that you know and love. It is up to you to find what is wrong with what I've just said, buzz in, and correct me. Your corrections must be preceded with the phrase, actually. If you don't say that, I won't give you the point. And you can interrupt me at any point you want. Well, with that, we'll go ahead and we'll get started. Here is our first statement here. Star Trek has had a long history on television with 10 different TV series and 2 more upcoming. While the franchise as a totality has won a huge amount of Emmy Awards in a variety of categories, only the original series and Next Generation were nominated for an Outstanding Series Award, and neither show won. The Next Generation did, however, win a Peabody and is the only Star Trek series to do so. Drucker's buzzed in.
Actually, Deep Space Nine was nominated for an Emmy?
Good guess, but no. Joan has buzzed in.
Actually, everything that airs on CBS All Access qualifies as a web series.
I want to be able to say that I'm working on a TV show if any of those places hire me, so I'm going to say that doesn't count.
Actually, there aren't 10 series.
That's not what we're going for.
Gotcha.
I'll go ahead and call it. This one's kind of a tricky one. What we're looking for here is that Star Trek, the animated series, did win for Best Outstanding Series. It was, in fact, the first Star Trek series to win an Emmy of any kind. The tricky thing there is, of course, it's animated, so it won Best Outstanding Children's Series, because that was the only thing it was eligible to win at the time. But it is the only Star Trek to have won Best Outstanding Series in any category.
That was like my 7th or 10th guess. After I just ran through every other option possible.
The Star Trek animated series, is the only one to kind of won like the big award. It's also like the only one to kind of be decanonized and be like, this doesn't count. This is just some other things. But no points for that one. But we'll go ahead and we'll keep moving. In horror comedy Cabin in the Woods, the heroes/victims inadvertently choose what monster will terrorize them by interacting with specific objects in the basement of the cabin. When one character reads aloud from the diary of Patience Buckner, she triggers the zombie event, but many other monster scenarios were possible, including Hell-Lord, Merman, Unicorn, Angry Molesting Tree, Kevin, and Sexy Witches.
Actually, it's demeaning to call the witches sexy.
It might be.
I think that's what they identify as.
Yeah,
okay, that's fair.
Yeah, they asked specifically for that. It's like,
They're
hey,
sexy.
We noticed that we're on the board as witches, and we just want you to know that we're more than that. And it's a big part of our personality that we're incredibly sexy.
There was already a group in the Monsters Union called Witches, so they had to add sexy witches to it so they could register.
Yeah.
Actually, that's what it just said on the plastic costume package they bought, just sexy witch. So that's what they had to go with.
Yeah.
The group that was original witches is like, wait, well, hold on, that was an option? Because I think the existence of sexy witches implies that we are the not sexy witches, and that doesn't seem right.
Yeah.
Actually, was that? I don't know if it was actually called the zombie event. Wasn't it just the Buckners?
That is close enough to. I'm going to call that correct. It is not the zombie event. It is specifically zombie redneck torture family, and that is
That's right.
It is specifically called out that is distinct from a separate zombie event. And in fact, 2 characters complain about the difference that there is a very important difference between those 2 things within the movie itself. So this isn't just me being pedantic; it's the characters in the movie being pedantic.
There was also a sexy zombie event that they didn't get to.
Sexy zombies.
Saltzman here has found the board where you can see some of the options that could have been hauntings.
There is witches and sexy witches right next to each other.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, a lot of these are also like references to classic horror movies. things like, angry molesting tree. Any thoughts about what Kevin is?
I think like Whedon was like Kevin is just like the scary guy that lived next door.
Mm-hmm.
He like it's one of the ones that doesn't necessarily have any like specific correlation to another horror movie.
What if it's Kevin McCallister and he's an adult setting traps? And like the traps really do mess you up.
It's an inverse Home Alone where he's trying to get other people out of his house with a bunch of traps. Home Alone is kind of a horror movie if you like take that violence at face value. It's like, this is a horrific thing to do to another person, burglar or no.
I feel like if you took out the like jaunty music, it is just horrifying. If you just had the raw sound of a paint can hitting someone square in the face, just like, good Lord. Yeah, it's grisly.
Yeah, there was like an indie horror movie like 2 years ago called, I forget what it's called, but it was someone just doing like Home Alone as like a horror thing where like the paint bucket actually like took a guy's head off and stuff. I'm trying to remember what it was called, but that movie exists. I saw it in theaters. It's definitely like a Christmas song title.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we will, at that point, we'll go to Joan and we'll keep moving on with our next statement here. Deadlands is a tabletop RPG that takes place in a Weird West setting. That is Wild West with fantasy, horror, and steampunk elements. While the game uses a polyhedral dice set typical to most tabletop RPGs, it also uses a set of poker chips called Fate chips, and a standard 52-card deck of playing cards, which is used in character creation and spellcasting. Andrew's buzzed in.
Actually, it doesn't use a standard 52 deck of cards.
That is correct. Can you be more specific?
Well, it doesn't use all 52.
You're pretty close. I'll give you the point unless someone else knows what the correct answer is.
Actually, they're not. They're different. They're a different shape. They're like circles.
I don't know why a deck of circular cards seems insane, but it feels just like trying to shuffle that. Like there's like the one point of like the overlapping of that would just be so hard.
Yeah.
No, they're not circles. I'll go ahead and give that point to you, Andrew. It uses a standard deck of cards, but it's technically a 54 deck of cards because jokers are an important part of the deck. So you leave the jokers in. But other than that, it's just like, yep, you use a deck of cards you might have around the house and use that for casting spells and creating your characters and adding like another element of chance that isn't dice into the game, but feels like true to the setting.
And the card that says rules of draw and stud poker.
Right? Yeah.
Also.
If you draw that, then it's like, oh, you become a god now.
Okay, yeah.
And that will bring us to our fan question for this episode. This was submitted to us by a viewer on the show. This comes to us from Teehee. If you lose to him in Street Fighter II, Ryu remarks that one must have defeated the character Shang Long to stand a chance against Ryu. However, players would not get the opportunity to do so until the release of Street Fighter II Turbo, when Shang Long was released under the name Akuma. Drucker has buzzed in.
Didn't Akuma come out in Super Street Fighter II Turbo?
Check me on this one, Saltzman. It's not what's listed on here, but that could be a thing that is incorrect in this statement.
There's something interesting here, which is that Mike is correct that it did come out in Super Street Fighter II Turbo. However, from what I can tell, there isn't a regular Street Fighter II Turbo. There's just, or maybe I'm wrong about that. Hold on, let me see.
There is a Street Fighter II Turbo.
Oh, you're right. You know what? Never mind. I just found it. Yeah, you were correct.
We'll give you that, Drucker. What we were looking for actually was that Shang Long was never a character and is not necessarily affiliated with Akuma. The phrase Shang Long appears in English versions of Street Fighter II. That was an error in translation of Shoryuken or Ryu's fireballs. So even like Shang Long, it was this just like weird lost in translation thing. Akuma only sort of inspired that sort of tangentially, but there is no Shang Long.
Do you remember those of us that are older? In gaming magazines, Shang Long was like always like the April Fool's Day joke cheat code that did not work. And when you're like 7 or 8, you believe it and you try for hours and it does not work.
The thing is, like, those kinds of things, those sorts of like, hey, try this, it might work, always feels like they could work, because I remember being a kid and like trying to get like fatalities in Mortal Kombat to work, and I would have the string of things in front of me, like press these buttons, and even still, like you couldn't always get them to work. Even like, I'm pressing the right thing, but sometimes they would. So you could never be sure if like the code you were punching in was like, oh, this just flat out doesn't work, or it's like, I'm dumb here. I'm the one who can't get this thing to work.
Yeah. Like, if I can get Bill Clinton in NBA Jam, I surely can be able to do this.
Yeah, exactly. You're just like, I'm like begging my parents for like the $5.99 a minute to call Game Pro magazine to like just dispute why this code isn't working.
Now I'm just imagining game codes that put Bill Clinton into every game. Street Fighter 2 Turbo with William Jefferson Clinton.
I'm gonna beat up this Acura. I'm gonna destroy it. This car doesn't stand a chance.
You've been working on that impression for 8 years, and you finally got a chance to use it.
They said I was a fool to practice this after the Clinton years were over, but I said no. The day will come.
Just in the mirror at night.
Well, great. Well, that point will go to Drucker, and this will bring us to our first shiny question of the game. And this is a game that we're calling Legal Limit, because it is a music and sound-based game. We're going to play for you a music track, but only a very small amount. In fact, about as much as we think we can legally get away with before someone gets angry at us. So these are just snippets of TV theme songs. And we're going to ask you to see if you can identify what show it is based only on the tiny snippet. And let's go ahead and listen to that first track. Joan has buzzed in.
Buffy the Vampire Slayer?
That is correct. Let's go ahead and listen to that second track. Joan has buzzed in again.
Is that Xena?
It's not Xena.
Is that Hercules?
It's not Hercules. I like the dual guesses, though.
I don't know. Is it one of the Stargates? Stargate Atlantis?
No, it's not. That was the original Battlestar Galactica.
Of course.
Oh, my ringtone, of course.
It was at my wedding.
I feel like I'm listening to like the bridge to an ELO song. Like that's what it sounds like to me.
Let's play it one more time.
I feel like whatever I guess is going to be embarrassing for me. Like anything I guess,
I'm refusing to guess because
I'm going to say, I don't know, is that Pretty Little Liars?
it's not.
Okay.
Actually, is it Gossip Girl?
It's not. No. This is from Dark, the series Dark on Netflix. Originally a German show. I include mainly because people don't talk about it enough, and it's an excellent show. And the theme song also rules. But when I was watching it, I was furious that more people hadn't told me to watch it. You know, it was like one of those things where it's like, what? Why weren't people talking about this all the time? This show's incredible. So now I'm doing that for you. If you haven't seen it, you should watch it. Let's take a listen to that next track. Drucker.
Actually, Futurama?
It is Futurama.
Ah!
Yes, that's that final just before the bells kick in. I was like, this is very little, but I bet someone can get it just off that little ding.
Wow.
Let's hear that next track. Andrew.
That's the newer Battlestar Galactica theme?
That's correct.
Yeah!
I put them both in there.
Wow.
I like that the first one was just a total stumper, and that one's like, no, I know this one.
Mm-hmm. It sticks out to me because I like the newer Battlestar Galactica. I like that show, but that theme always like stuck out to me as not matching with the show. I mean, that's just my personal opinion, but it always felt like it didn't fit the show. Like, oh yeah, I recognize that because it was a burr in my saddle for like a couple of years. It's like,
it pisses you off every time.
Every time.
Great. Well, we have one more track here. You've each gotten one. So this will either stump all of you for a tie or someone will move ahead and claim this point. So let's play that last track. Faces of pain all around.
It's really about making sure we don't sound racist in our guesses.
It really is.
I feel like
this is the.
You're just playing racist chicken now, waiting for someone to be the first to.
Who's gonna dive on this grenade? Come on now.
Looks like passes all around. No one wants to take a stab here. That is from Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood. That is that one. You've each identified one show in there, which means I'll give you each 1 point, which means the scoreline, the relative scoreline remains the same, but you all got points on the board one way or another there.
Yeah.
I feel like with a lot of streaming platforms now, you get the option to skip the opening theme, and I unless the opening theme song is a real garbage track, I always feel like I enjoy having that moment to sort of like, it's like the equivalent of dimming the lights a bit and being like, yes, now I'm entering the show, you know?
I like theme songs, but I feel like modern shows have known how to make like an opening credits interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been rewatching Deep Space Nine, and that opening sequence is very long and very boring because there's a lot of people in the show. So it's like a 5-minute pan of different parts of a Cardassian space station, and you just need to get through it.
That makes sense. We can't do this every time.
Right.
Cool. We'll move back to our regular old questions here. Spider-Man fights a lot of villains with animal themes. While Lizard, Rhino, and Vulture have all been featured in Spider-Man movies, you'll have to go to the comics for less familiar rogues like Gibbon, Kangaroo, Hippo, Iguana, Turtle, Armadillo, and Pandamania, a panda-themed supervillain. Joan is buzzed in.
Actually, one of those crazy villains you mentioned is somewhere into the Spider-Verse.
That's a great guess, but no.
Hippo is not a villain.
Hippo is a villain. He is a mutated hippo who was originally named Mrs. Fluffy Lumpkins.
Actually, Gibbon is actually a hero from the Marvel Ape universe.
What an incredible guess. No, there is a Gibbon Spider-Man villain. Although I did have a whole question devoted to that Ape Universe comics because I find them delightfully stupid, the names that are in there. Saltzman, yeah, do you have a point of order here?
It's not what we're going for, but Joan's right about that reference. Like, it doesn't necessarily contradict what we're saying, but like that is a correct reference. There is the Gibbon in Marvel's Apes. So
is it a rogue or a hero?
It's a hero.
All right. Well, we're obviously not getting the right answer, so I'll go ahead and give it to Joan. Because I did call the Gibbon a rogue in the comics. If there is a hero in comics also named Gibbon, I guess that's okay. That's not what I was looking for. What I was looking for is that Turtle is a DC villain who opposes the Flash. Which Gibbon is this? Our Spider-Man villain Gibbon, or our?
This is the Ape Universe Gibbon. This is Martin Blanks, I think is his name.
Sure, they worked hard on that one.
Mm-hmm. That's him. Yeah.
It reminds me of there was a period in comics history where they crunched some numbers and they determined that anytime a gorilla was on the cover, the comics sold like 500% more than a normal comic would. And so there was this like period of comics history where they would just shoehorn gorillas onto covers of and you can like do a search for, you can find like all these like old Batman comics. One of my favorite ones is it shows Batman on the outskirts of Gotham and he's holding a gorilla over his head that's like unconscious, and there's a like band of dynamite wrapped around the gorilla. Robin's like, "What are you doing, Batman?" It's like, "I have to get this exploding gorilla out of Gotham before it destroys the city." And like clearly like it could have just been a bomb, you know, like there's no reason. There's nothing different from an unconscious gorilla and a very heavy bomb.
That was actually the original ending of The Dark Knight Rises. That's what he sends the ship. He sends the ship out over the bay carrying.
There we go. Look at him.
His first line on that cover is, "Hold that gorilla, Batman."
And then also true, I'll just share this with you, that Spider-Man does have like just a shit ton of animal-themed supervillains. Some that I didn't include because the list would have been too long include Scorpion, Tarantula, Grizzly, Wolf, aka Man-Wolf, Fly, aka Human Fly, Black Cat, White Rabbit, Beetle, Swarm, which is a bee, Vermin, which is a rat, and of course, Dr. Octopus, among others that I'm sure I didn't even include on this list. It's a lot of animals.
They have a similar whiteboard as in Cabin on the Woods with just a bunch of animals like listed. All right, well, today we're doing sexy cuttlefish. That's what that's what he's fighting next.
They've got an old stack of zoo books, and they're just like, every time they're like, "What do we do?" And it's like, "Get to go to the zoo books." It's like, maybe he could fight pufferfish. I don't know. That could work.
I like the idea of becoming a supervillain and then having to Google names and really being sad as you're going through. You're like, "Wait, there's a tarantula? Okay,
I could be sexy tarantula." Well, fantastic. With that, we'll move on to our next question. In Abe's Exodus, the second installment of the Oddworld series, Abe's powers of possession can affect many more creatures than they do in the first game. Under the right circumstances, Abe can control sligs, slogs, paramites, scrabs, gluckins, and even his own farts.
Actually, he can't control paramites.
No, that's incorrect.
I just swing.
Swing. Hey, swing. You miss all the shots you don't take. Wayne Gretzky, Michael Scott.
Actually, slogs aren't one of them. Sligs are, but slogs I don't. Are they?
That's correct, actually. In Abe's Exodus, Abe can't control slogs, though he can in Munch's Odyssey, which comes later. But in that one game, all the other things are possessible, which also like raises the point that I guess in Abe's Exodus, your own farts are more possessible than like a dog-like creature. I don't know what that says about the intelligence of the creature or the potency of the farts, but it's weird that like this, like one can be controlled and the other is like, no, this is just off limits. Drucker, clearly you've played some of these games. And Andrew and Joan, have you played them?
I just had to look at a picture of like the Oddworld game because I had not played it, and then like a wave of late '90s like imagery just like washed across my brain.
Walking around in EB Games and seeing the cover like glaring out at you.
Babbage's bah! Yeah, just like wow.
I'm gonna be honest and say I was until we talked about it, I was picturing Seaman.
Just like thinking about this game and this time period in games and media just like strikes me as like a time when things were really gross.
Yes.
Even like the Klasky Supo like animation of that time of like the early mid 90s was like a little bit more crude.
I saw new images of like the CGI 3D Rugrats, and I'm like, this is wrong. They don't look gross.
Yeah.
Legit, actually, it's so funny you mentioned that because like my mom hated Rugrats, had never seen the show, but the very image of them repulsed her so much that she was like, I don't want you watching this gross baby show. Like there's something wrong with those babies. Their teeth are growing in weird and they're lumpy and like this show is wrong and it's an affront to God.
You know what? She's not wrong. They are upsetting to look at.
Yeah.
But it's good stuff.
Well, that point will go to Drucker. We'll move along here. In the Star Trek Next Generation episode Genesis, a contagion causes the crew of the Enterprise to devolve. Humans like Riker and Barclay transform into caveman-like Australopithecines. Half-Betazoid Deanna Troi changes into a frog-like amphibian, and the Klingon Worf changes into a vicious, beast-like proto-Klingon. Andrew's buzzed in.
Actually, that was Star Trek Voyager.
This was Next Generation.
There's a very similar episode in Star Trek Voyager.
That's so weird.
Like they start devolving. They like go past warp. They go past warp 10, and then Janeway and one of the other members of the crew start devolving into like amphibians.
If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Let's do that one again, I guess.
Actually, Worf devolves into like a very like classy, refined Klingon, and he has like a monocle and a top hat and stuff.
It's like a Mr. Peanut version of Klingon, and it's just like we used to be very fancy, but then we changed to be more warlike.
Yeah. Yes.
No, that's incorrect.
Dumb guess. I'm actually the humans turn into Neanderthals. I'm trying to find like the smallest thing.
You've kind of found a wrong thing, which is that while Riker does devolve into this sort of ape-like Australopithecus type thing, Barclay does not, despite also being a human. So you found that that part is wrong. So I'll give you the point unless someone can tell me specifically what Barclay devolves into.
A baby.
Is not a baby.
A gibbon.
No. Barclay changes into a spider monster. A spider monster makes no sense at all with like the rules that they've set up. I mean, I guess you can if you go into the idea that it's like, oh, well, like all life, springs from like the same like never-ending chain of like evolution that you can go back to some kind of like insectoid arthropod type thing. But it's like that's kind of a different branch of the evolutionary tree that doesn't feel like that's right. But I'll give Drucker that point for at least identifying that at least one of the humans does not change into an ape-like creature, even though that wasn't what you intended. This is the Barclay spider monster. There you go.
You're going to want to get that looked at.
That's nothing. I'll walk through it.
I tested negative. I don't see what the problem is.
Don't make me wear a mask. This is tyranny. Scuttle. Can you find a picture of that proto-Klingon that Worf devolves into? Look at that.
Oh, man.
Jeez.
That is rough.
Yeah, that's a very spiky.
That is some, like, Cordyceps Last of Us type shit.
Yeah.
What is the evolutionary process that they're just like, we don't need as many spikes on our face?
Yeah.
These are not useful spikes.
Look, we want to be wearing top hats.
Yeah.
We want to be wearing top hats, so we can't have all these spikes. They're not going to, the monocle won't fit.
This looks like you could draw an evolutionary chart that, like, one branch led to Klingons and another led to Predators.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, we'll go ahead and we'll move on to our next statement. This is our second shiny question here of the game. This is a game that we're calling We're Not So Different, You and I. So in a moment, I'm going to put up 6 images up here. These are 6 characters that all have something in common. They seem like they're from wildly different franchises, wildly different characters, but there is something that unites all of them. Whoever can identify the thing that these 6 characters have in common will get the point. Joan has buzzed in.
They are all clones.
That's correct. All these characters are clones, failed clones, successful clones, clones that want to do something else. But all these characters are, in fact, clones of some other figure. I guess mild spoilers for some of these, but if you're watching this show, I mean, you gotta expect that, right? Yeah, it's fun how much that seems to pop up. Cloning never works the way you want it to. You think it'll get you exactly what you want a second time, but it just doesn't. Something always goes a little bit off.
How many times do we have to learn about man's hubris
I
through
know.
this one device?
That point will go to Joan.
And are we calling Boba Fett a failed clone? Is he technically a failed clone, or just a clone that was, chose to be raised by his clone father in a different way?
Yeah, I guess that's a good question. What does Jango Fett think about Boba Fett? Do you take all the usual parental pressures that are on there? It's like, hey, I have a lot of expectations for you as my child. This is what I want for you. I have dreams for you. I have things that I expect you to be like. That's got to be 10 times worse when it's your literal clone, where it's like, hey, listen, you can't blame this on genetics. I know how I turned out. So if you're fucking up, it's something you're doing wrong.
Just, I have no clone.
Yeah.
That's the last thing Jango said to Boba before he got beheaded at the Battle of Geonosis.
We'll keep this game moving right along. I didn't intend to do this, but this is now going to be our third reference to Futurama in this episode. Sorry, I just like Futurama. And that's just how this shook out. After Fry is cryogenically frozen, his brother Yancey takes Fry's lucky 7-leaf clover and his name, Philip. With the luck of the clover, Philip Fry goes on to strike oil in the mansion he won in the lottery, date an Icelandic supermodel, have a successful music career, and become the first man on Mars. Joan is buzzed in.
He doesn't actually take the name Philip. He gives the name Philip to his son to pay tribute to his late brother, or not late brother, as you know.
That is correct. You spend most of the episode thinking it's him, but it is in fact Fry's nephew, Philip J. Fry II. I love Futurama so much. I just like genre comedies. I like a good sci-fi comedy, good fantasy comedy. And it also, to me, struck this really nice balance of being a little bit edgy without being edgelord edgy. You know what I mean? It had some kind of things to say about society, but it wasn't like smoking a cigarette under the bleachers or something. It's just totally turning aside life, just being everything's fucked. It's no, we're still having fun here,
And as a show, I think it references everything we've talked about in this show thus far.
I love how the effects of the lucky 7-leaf clover, it's oh no, this thing really fucking works. The luckiest thing that could possibly happen to you, just striking oil in the mansion you won in the lottery, is just levels of luck that are yeah, okay, I guess that is a perfectly charmed life.
Yeah, and what a fun thing to write in the room.
Yeah.
It's all right, what's the luckiest thing you could possibly think of? Let's hear them all.
We'll move right along here to our next statement. The comic series East of West is a sci-fi / fantasy horror / western set in the future in an alternate reality where the Civil War never ended. As such, the geopolitical borders of the United States are wildly different, divided into 7 nations: the Union, the Confederacy, the Kingdom, the Endless Nation, the Republic of Texas, the People's Republic of America, and the neutral zone known as Armistice. It is in this fractured world that the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse rise up and use their collective powers to hasten the end of days. Andrew, you buzzed in.
Actually, it wouldn't be the United States.
Because they're not united.
They're not united.
It's very funny. The way I have phrased it, I've said the geopolitical borders of the United States are wildly different, implying that they are not, in fact, united. So I'm not going to give it to you.
Actually, it doesn't take place in the far future. It is the present, but just a crazily different present.
No, it is in fact in the far future in an alternate reality.
I've read this series too, and I'm trying to figure out what part's wrong because I like this series, and now I'm mad at myself.
Yeah, I'll call it. I will say that this is a little annoying in that it's mostly a wording correction versus a specifics correction. What I was looking for is that I say that the four horsemen of the apocalypse rise up and use their collective powers to hasten the end of days. Of course, Death at this point is not working with the other horsemen. He has gone rogue and is at worst, neutral, and at best working against the other horsemen. So you can't say that he's trying to hasten the end of days. He's trying to stop it. Drucker, you said that you've read this series?
I knew that it was Death, and I kept in my head being like, does he count in that four horsemen? And I could not remember because it's been like 2 years.
This is one of the few comic series I still kind of regularly read, but it is the kind of thing that is pure comics in the sense that this premise takes so long to explain to anyone. When I try to recommend the series, yeah, it's really cool. I'm like, what's it about? It's okay, well, how much time do you have? Because just to set you up is gonna be a little bit of work here.
I had these brochures printed up that'll explain everything.
Yeah. Are you cool with alternate realities? Yes? Okay, great. Well, now we're in the future in a different reality. Now, of course, at this point, California is a communist country run by China. Also, there's a techno country. It's all that. Also, demons are real. Also, it's the biblical end of days.
This all applies to now. This all applies to everything you've said so far.
Well, no points for that one. But this will bring us to our last shiny question. Last shiny question of the game. This is a game we're calling Brand Awareness. So I have a series of 6 images. These are 6 fictional brand names. And I'm going to ask you to identify what show, comic, movie, video game, whatever, these brands are from.
It looks anime-y, which means I don't know it.
Xanatos.
I like that you said that like a character in a show. Xanatos.
I said it like it was a fabled lost city.
Yes.
I know I've encountered something called Xanatos before.
Well, any guesses, or is this a pass all around?
Pass.
This
is from Gargoyles. Xanatos.
Oh my god!
yes.
Oh my god!
That's what I'm hearing in my head. I'm hearing I'm hearing Goliath be like
Xanatos.
So no points for that one. Let's take a look at our next brand.
I feel like it's some future corp that doesn't have good plans for humanity.
That's all of these. There's never a corporation that has good plans for humanity.
That's true. That's very true. It also looks like the Google Drive logo, but that's not.
That's true.
Is this Aperture Science?
No. It's a good guess. It's a similar logo, but that's not what this is.
Is this from Assassin's Creed?
It is from Assassin's Creed, yes. Yeah, I'll give you the point for that.
Yes.
Do you know what it's called?
Oh, wow.
Oh, gosh.
The Relivinating?
Gentlemen, I've called the board here to discuss possibly renaming our corporation.
Wait, it's called the Animus, isn't it?
Animus, yeah.
I was looking for, maybe this is wrong or specific, I was looking for Abstergo or Abstergo. I don't know how it's pronounced.
Oh.
Abstergo, yeah, that's the name of the company. I think the Animus is the device.
Yeah,
Got
made
it.
by them. You're right.
But I'll still give you the point because you identified the property that it's from. Let's take a look at our next logo.
That is, of course, by and large, originally from WALL-E, but then appears in lots of other Pixar movies, including Buzz Lightyear's batteries in Toy Story 3.
That is extremely correct. Joan is buzzed in.
Is that Vought Industries from Watchmen?
Sorry, say it one more time.
It's from Watchmen, I'm going to say.
Okay.
And it's Voight, John Voight's company in Watchmen.
I'm gonna say you're close enough because you said Watchmen. At first, you confused me because I didn't. It's Vought Enterprises, and it is from Watchmen. At first, you confused me because Vought is the name of the company in The Boys. So I thought you had confused those two. But yes, it is from Watchmen. And since you identified the property, which is all I asked for, we'll give you that point. But that is Vought Enterprises. Drucker. Yes,
it is
that
definitely me, Shinra.
That is Shinra. Drucker just
Shinra Electric Company.
Oh, gotta get that Mako or Mako, however you pronounce it.
I said Mako and people got very angry at me. So I don't know. I'm sure they would have gotten angry either way. We've got one more to show. That's 2 for Joan, 1 each for Andrew and Drucker. Let's take a look at that last one. Drucker.
That is from the Fifth Element.
That is from the Fifth Element. That is Zorg Industries. Trying to remember his full name, like Jean-Emmanuel Baptiste Zorg or something like that.
Gotta get those stones. Gotta get those stones.
Get those stones. Yeah, lots of corporations. They're all up to no good. That is 2 for Joan, 2 for Drucker, 1 for Andrew. That means Drucker and Joan, you'll share the point for this one. So 1 point for each of you. All right, this actually brings us to our final question of the game. Here's our last question, which, as always, concerns real-life skills. Nothing to do with the nerd shit we've been talking about, just something that might be valuable for day-to-day life. And this is one that is a little California-specific, because I assumed we'd be dealing mostly with California contestants. Very stupid that this is what's happening with this particular episode, but here we are. Sure, you've learned a lot about wizards and shit, but what about learning about learning? In California, full-time education is compulsory for children between ages 5 and 18, but your child will not be able to enroll in school unless they turn 5 by September 1st, at which point they can attend kindergarten. Drucker.
Actually, it's not compulsory till you're 18. Can't you drop out when you're 16?
No, that's not correct.
Actually, it's not September 1st.
It is September 1st.
Actually, it's 4, not 5.
No, that's not correct. I'll go ahead and call it. I said that school is compulsory between 5 and 18. Children in California may be admitted into kindergarten at age 5, but it's not compulsory at that point. They must be admitted to school by age 6, at which point you can choose whether to send them to kindergarten or first grade. But you can choose not to send them to school until age 6, if you so choose. Most people don't, because get the kids out of the house, get them into school. It's a better learning experience. It's better for parents. Everything's better once you can get them into school. But you do have that option if you so choose in California. No points for that one, but that's okay. That makes Joan our winner for this episode. Very good showing. And that's it for this episode. Join us next time for even more pedantic corrections here on Actually.